I'm delighted to welcome James McGee, who's a professional tennis coach and a professional tennis player, and you work for the Inspiring Children Foundation, which I've been fascinated to read about. I bumped into it online, absolutely intrigued by what the Inspiring Children Foundation does. So, can you tell me a little bit about, first of all, you have been a professional tennis player. Has your professional tennis playing career ended? Have you sort of moved on from that?
Yes. So I'm from Ireland. I grew up in Ireland until I was about 17, and moved to Spain for a couple of years. And after living in Spain, I came to America for the first time to go to college. And when I was in college, I met someone. His name is Frederick Prendecki, who was the very first person to come through the Inspiring Children Foundation that you were talking about. And he used to tell me stories when we were in college. This is 16 years ago. He used to tell me stories about how the foundation changed his life, and how he used to be in a very rough situation as a teenager, where he was in a gang and he was selling guns, and he was kind of going down a pretty dark path in his life. And he used to tell me stories in college about how this one man, Ryan Wolfington, helped him and changed him. And Ryan used to basically took him under his wing and taught him the values of hard work, of earning your own way, of doing the right thing in your life. And long story short, Freddie became the first person in his family to graduate from high school, eventually the first person in his family to graduate from college, and now he's a very successful businessman and happily married in Las Vegas. And what's interesting about Freddie and Ryan is that Ryan helped another person and another person and another person, and over the course of 20 years, the Inspiring Children Foundation has grown into this, big organization where we've had over 170 children earn college scholarships through our program. And that's really inspiring to me, because the focus is not just on getting a college scholarship, but it's very much on mental health. It's very much on looking at the whole human, which is something I'm very passionate towards. I've always had a passion towards human development. So it's interesting, my background, because I played professional tennis from 2008 to the end of 2017, roughly, 10 years on the tour, lived out of my suitcase 45 weeks a year, competing, traveling, training, and lived a very nomadic lifestyle that was challenging physically, mentally, emotionally, to the highest degree. And near the end of my career, I played all the Grand Slams. I qualified into the US Open. I played the qualifying of Wimbledon and the French and the Australian Open. And in 2017, when I was supposedly at my highest, from an outer perspective, I felt very empty within myself. And I knew I had to look at that part of myself, because I was really struggling. And I basically decided, I got injured in the US Open, and I spent a few months kind of traveling and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I realized that I wanted to get my happiness back, and I wanted to really focus on myself first before I focus on my career, because ultimately that's the most important thing, is really taking care of our own mental health and feeling good within ourselves. You never want to do something just for the sake of doing it. So I reached out to Ryan Wolfington. I'd been friends with him on Facebook, but hadn't really interacted with him. And I sent him a message. I said, Ryan, I love what you're doing in Las Vegas. I love the foundation. I love what you're all about. Can I have a conversation? I just want to have a life conversation. And long story short, he offered me a position in Las Vegas to run our Team Brian program, which is our tennis education and arts program, but also to be really involved in the kids' lives, also to really work on myself, because it gave me a chance to really work on finding purpose and meaning in my own life. So long story short, I've been here for 3.5 years. It's been very meaningful. The work is fantastic. And there's a lot of stories that go behind that, but I'm very happy where I'm at now. And who would have thought I would have come here after playing professional tennis? I definitely didn't expect it. It's just one of these things. It just happened.
It's just fascinating, isn't it? And I understand both from, I mean, I think I told you that I've written a children's novel. So from that perspective, where I sort of wrote about emotional intelligence within the story, but also my other life as a musician, where I work with top classical musicians, which is
Oh,
very, very sort of, you know, that's not dissimilar to what you're doing actually. And having been, you know, sort of a top, absolute top tennis player, you'll relate to what I deal with top classical musicians as well.
yeah,
So and what I find absolutely fascinating is the absolute importance. It's so important that mental, emotional, and physical, obviously physical when you're an athlete, but
yeah.
mental and emotional health is so important, and you can't do anything well unless you've got that balance. And people don't seem to realize that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's everything. They're the pillars of what we do in our organization. We're primarily focused on transforming children's lives through physical, mental, and emotional health. And, you know, it's interesting because more and more people now are talking about mental health, and there's less of a stigma around it. And you hear a lot of people going to therapy now and openly discussing the fact that they've dealt with depression or anxiety. And I think that's positive. I think it's very positive because in my line of work, where I get to work with youth, primarily, the ages of 12 to 18, you really see how many kids are struggling, and it's a combination of things. It's being on the phone, it's being on social media, it's not interacting on a deep level with their friends, it's feeling isolated or lonely. And it's so important to really take care of our physical, mental, and emotional health first, prior to dealing with anything else. And I know Ryan, when he talks about this, you obviously grow up in school and you learn English and mathematics and French and all these important subjects like chemistry and physics and all that kind of thing, but they never teach you how to deal with your emotions. How do you deal with your anger? How do you deal with your sadness? How do you deal with a difficult relationship? There's no real playbook for that as a young person. You kind of just have to figure it out for yourself. And so what the foundation does, and what we really promote, is really a whole human approach to education, where we talk about those things. We really talk about, what are your struggles, like what are you really struggling with? And I think that's really the beauty in what we do, because kids are given a safe environment to open up, to share their struggles, to not feel judged. And with that, they heal themselves, they have better relationships, and they've more confidence, and they're more empowered to really go after what they want in life.
So how does that look sort of on a daily basis? I mean, if somebody comes and it comes, what do you mainly do? Do you mainly teach tennis? Is that the sort of main focal point, or with other things as well? Or do people come for that, or do they come for something else?
Yeah, we have a variety of different programs. And if you could just picture an umbrella, obviously it's the Inspiring Children Foundation at the top. And I'm more of a visual person, so I have to explain it that way. Maybe some people aren't, some people are more auditory, but you've got the Inspiring Children Foundation. Within the foundation, you've got different programs. So the first program is what I'm the director of. It's our Team Brian program. And that's supported by Bob and Mike Bryan, who, if anyone knows tennis, they'll know that they're the greatest doubles team of all time. They've won the most Grand Slams. They've won Olympic gold medals. They've won the most number of titles. And they're incredible human beings. They're actually musicians as well. They went to Stanford, and they got behind our program because they were so inspired by the work that we're doing, and they saw the results. And they've just been incredible ambassadors for us, and we're just so proud to have them supporting us. So we've got our tennis program, that we're partnered with an academy here in Las Vegas, which is 5 minutes from our office, called the No Quit Tennis Academy. So we have a lot of kids that play tennis, and after they play tennis, they come to our foundation office and they do schoolwork and different projects. But before I go into that, I'll just go through the other programs that we have. So the first one is Team Brian. The second one is our Jewel Never Broken program. And that's supported by singer-songwriter Jewel, who's obviously amazing. She's an incredible person. And if anyone has read her book, It's called Never Broken. She goes into great detail about her story about dealing with domestic abuse, homelessness, panic attacks, a lot of anxiety, and using music and using a variety of different tools to basically heal her life. And so our Jewel Never Broken program is really about healing, and it's really about connection, and it's primarily about mental health. So we have kids, for example, to answer your question, we have kids that are in our program, but they don't play tennis. They've never picked up a tennis racket in their lives, but we have, I don't want to name names, but we have a certain student in our program right now who came through us because they learned about us online. They reached out and they were struggling with their mental health, and they happened to be a musician. They followed Jewel, and they came through us through that avenue. So there's different avenues to come through us. It's the tennis side, it's the emotional and mental health side. And then on top of that, we also have an entrepreneurship program. So we're big on teaching the kids, we're big on helping the kids learn by doing. In other words, we give them the opportunity, if they're passionate about a certain project. We have one kid at the moment who's really, really passionate about fishing, and we've helped support him start a fish business. And he now has, and he's just getting it off the ground, but we have a bunch of fish tanks in our office. He takes care of them. He's importing different fish from Thailand and all over the world. And this is a crazy story. We run an event with Branson every year in November called the Necker Cup. And Richard came to Las Vegas to open up the Virgin Hotel about a year ago. And he decided to come by our foundation office because he wanted to learn about our operation and how it worked. And when he walked into the office, he saw all these fish tanks, and he asked about it. He says, who's running these fish tanks? Who runs it? And we explained that for our youth. And long story short, Richard said, well, listen, I'm looking for 500 koi fish. Can you get them to Necker Island?
No.
And who's just started the business, his first customer is Richard Branson. So, it's pretty funny.
Fantastic. Oh, yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy that these are the things that happen. And so that's part of our program. There really is more to talk about, but we do have, we have tennis, we have mental emotional health, we have entrepreneurship, and we also have a housing program for kids that have been homeless or displaced, or they're from a different part of the country and they can't be in our environment. And so I actually am a house parent. You'll see in the background, I'm in a house right now. This is like the place. I'm in a casita, and I stay at the house right next to where a bunch of our youth live. So that's kind of a really brief summary.
It's fantastic because it gives a real flavor of what you're doing, and it's so important. I mean, and especially in the last 2 years where, the stories I've heard about teenagers have just been heartbreaking in the last couple of years. And, I've known people myself who've really struggled, and it's very, very sad. And it's so great to hear that there is a foundation that is actually addressing all the things that are so critical to address. And I mean, do you think, what do you feel about sort of, education generally? I mean, you're in the States now. What do you feel about, what was your experience actually in Dublin, first of all, of education? I mean, was it geared specifically towards tennis, or was tennis, obviously, if you're a professional player at that level, you would have had to be really, really streamlined with tennis right the way through?
Yes. Well, I grew up so I went to a school called Belvedere College when I was 12 years of age, 12 to roughly 17 or 18. And it was an all boys school. You get up every morning, you put your uniform on and you have your tie on. And I had an incredible education there. And I was fortunate to have great teachers, to have good friends. But near the end of my experience there, when I was about 17 and a half, I had the opportunity. I was approached by a couple of sponsors in Ireland, and they said, listen, we see you're doing decent in your tennis. You're number one in the country as a junior. We believe in you. We'd like to see you kind of progress to the next level, but you're really going to have to leave the country and start playing with the better players if you want to excel. So for me as a teenager, I was very focused on tennis. And I'm happy I was focused on tennis, but I do have regrets because I put my schooling to the side. And that's a regret of mine, because I think if you're going to do anything, do it to the best of your ability. And for me, as a young teenager, I was so hard-headed and stubborn. I was just like, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be a tennis player and I don't care,
But I mean, is there anything wrong with that? Because I think, if you have one focus, especially as a child or a teenager, it's very healthy, because because everything else comes alongside it very often. I mean, the kids that I've known who have done, have excelled in music or whatever it might be, very often are really good at everything else as well. And I mean, that's something, and what I say to my students a lot is that my education started when I left higher education. I mean, I started really learning because I didn't even notice I was learning. I'd be picking books up, or I'd be watching videos, I'd be immersing myself in stuff, didn't even notice it. It's just that I didn't have I mean, I did further education till I was 25, but, so I did a lot of it. But, but from then onwards, I didn't have any sort of letters after my name for the next bit. It was just enjoying education. So do you feel that I mean, probably doing what you're doing at the moment, you're learning constantly all the time?
Definitely. Yeah, no, I've been very fortunate to be in a position now where I can get in I'm involved in a wide range of roles. So I initially was, I've talked about heading up the Team Brian Tennis Education and Arts program, and that's been a great experience. But I'm slowly moving into fundraising, and fundraising, just that in itself, there's so much to learn about. For example, I'm doing grant writing at the moment. I'm dealing with donors, and you're understanding the nature of what it's like to run a nonprofit business. Or entity, and it's just I've learned so much in this period. I've learned so much in the past 3.5 years, but at the same time, part of me, I don't want to sit here and say like, hey, like, don't go to school or quit school and focus on tennis, because I'm very careful about what to say. I think when I was younger, I remember someone told me, like, don't worry about school, just focus all on tennis. And I took their word for it, but I completely neglected school to the point where I almost quit, and I didn't give it my best. And one thing that we talk about is we're big on principles. We talk about different principles within our organization, amongst our staff and amongst our kids. And it's all about giving your best, right? Regardless of what you do. And I think, I'm not saying you should go to school or you should not, or you should focus on these other passions. I'm saying whatever you do it to the best of your ability. And we talk a lot about following what we know is right and following our intuition. If you have a sense to do something and you really know strongly within your heart that that's the right thing for you, by all means pursue it, but do it to the best of your ability, and don't half-ass it,
That's, I mean, so how often do we hear people in any form of education talk about following your intuition? It's not normal, is it?
No, I definitely hear that growing up. In fact, if someone said that or heard me saying it, I'd definitely get a few side glances. So that's a big principle of ours. We talk a lot about intuition and trusting our inner knowing and our gut. And we kind of have conversations about it. Like, what's the difference between your intuition and being in your head and thinking about something, and we kind of have those conversations. That's what we do a lot. We have a lot of group discussions, and I mean, I'm a big fan of that. I think we should always follow what our
So tell me some stories about some of the children who are, who are at the foundation, who you've been teaching or coaching, and where they've come from, or what experiences they've had and what they've discovered.
We could honestly be here for hours, but I'll take
a few highlights.
A few highlights. So we have one girl right now. Her name is Cheryl. And I get, if you go online, if you go on YouTube, you're definitely you're going to find some videos about her and her life story. But she's an amazing young lady. She's 19 or 20 years of age at the moment. And when she grew up in Las Vegas, she had a very difficult relationship with her father. And it was very abusive in, all types of ways. And he, was very verbally, emotionally abusive. And when she was 13 years of age, her father, this gets pretty dark, by the way, so for any viewers, just letting you know, this next story might put someone off, so just be aware of that. But her father basically rang her up one day and basically said, I'm going to commit suicide and I'm going to kill myself, and it's all because of you. And you haven't been like a good daughter, and just extremely abusive stuff. And then he hung up the phone, and she was in a position where she felt she had failed. She had felt like she had failed her dad, and she felt like she wasn't good enough. And she had so many negative thoughts about herself. Her dad did not commit suicide, but she attempted suicide afterwards because she felt so worthless and she didn't feel like life was worth living. And so that happened on a couple of occasions. She ended up going to the hospital, going to the psychiatric unit. And the doctors told her mom to call the clergyman in. In other words, get ready because she's going to die. She's not going to survive this. And so she ended up waking up from a coma, and she was completely depressed, completely down on life, didn't see any point in living. And our founder, Ryan Wolfington, who started the foundation, started talking to her about life, started talking to her about her negative thoughts that she was feeling and her negative feelings. And we have a saying here in the foundation. We say, you are not your thoughts and you are not your negative feelings. And so he talked to her about that, and he taught her meditation. He taught her the value of breathing and getting back into the moment and noticing your thoughts and being able to separate from your thoughts. And it was a light bulb moment for her, because over the next 6 months to a year and years after, she started to separate from her negative thoughts, because she realized that wasn't who she was. She just realized that that's her mind. And we talk about that a lot in the foundation, where you're not your thoughts, And because when you believe your negative thoughts, I can tell you that every kid has negative thoughts about themselves. They think they're not good enough. They think they're ugly. They think they're an idiot. They think nobody likes them. They think they're not smart enough. I mean, the list goes on and on. And if you actually had them write down a list of thoughts, you'd be shocked to hear what some kids are saying to themselves. And so with Cheryl, she went on this healing journey of letting go of her negative thoughts and starting to basically do the right things in her life and really working very, very hard on herself. So a couple of years later, her father passed away. Obviously, that was another tragic incident in her life. But she noticed as time went on, she was feeling better and better within herself. And long story short, from someone who attempted suicide twice at 13 and 14, Cheryl has gone on to get 2 college scholarships to Stanford University, and she's in Stanford right now. And not only is she in Stanford, but she's running a mental health community at the moment called Buddies. She's absolutely taken it by storm, and she's flying. And if you're to ever ask Cheryl, like, what her happiness is on a scale of 1 to 10, I know she'd say it's 100, because she's worked so hard on being happy and so hard on letting and truly being happy, not faking it, not like just putting a smile on your face, but really working on her inner journey, working on her spirit, working on all these things that really help someone let go of these negative thoughts and feel alive again. And so she's been incredible. There's so many stories around her. Jewel was a big supporter of her and mentored her for a good portion of that healing, along with Ryan. And she's just amazing. Her name's Cheryl Odell. So that's one story in our foundation. I could go on and tell you a lot more if you want.
I mean, it's incredible. It's like, what can we do to try and get this kind of model out as being the norm rather than the exception to the rule. I mean, it's fantastic that it's happening. It's absolutely wonderful. I love it. I just want to, I mean, I bet you sort of feel the same. You want to just sort of take it around the whole of the US and make sure every state has the equivalent,
Definitely. No, definitely. I think the world will benefit from what this kind of community and this kind of environment that we have, because, and let's be honest, there are a lot of successful stories. There's a lot of great stories like Cheryl's story. We have a bunch of other kids who have really come from abusive situations, but there's also been difficult situations where certain kids haven't wanted to change. And some kids, you can't make someone change. They have to really want it within themselves. And we talk about that a lot in our foundation. And we actually have an application process to get into our foundation. We don't just give it for free, because we believe that everything is earned. So to be in the foundation, you have to earn your own way. And the question is, how are you going to earn your way into the foundation? Because there's certain kids who don't have the financial means to play in the tennis academy or to do all these other things. So they earn their way by volunteering. They earn their way by having their parents give each other different rides and giving kids lifts to and from school. Okay. They help each other. They earn their own way by restringing tennis rackets. And there's a million different things you can come up with to kind of earn your own way. And for me, that is the key to what we do, is that it's not just given to someone, but they understand deeply that this is a privilege to be part of this organization, and that if you're part of it, it's because you're there to heal, and you're there to be your best self. You're not there to do bad things in your life, and to make bad decisions. You're there to be your best self and to excel and to grow. And if you're struggling, there's no problem with that. That's totally part and parcel of your growth. But we just don't want to, we don't have kids that are out there partying late at night. Like, let's be honest. Like, we're in Las Vegas of all places. Like, it's the party center of the world. So, we have kids who are living an honest life and trying to be their best, and that's why I'm doing it, because it's so inspiring to be around people like that. And it's not just our kids, it's our staff members, and it's our alumni, and it's all the people that are part of the community. It is absolutely a team effort to make this work.
It's real education, isn't it? It's the real meaning of education. And I think to support children in managing their emotions and their mental health, and giving them purpose and meaning, and empowering them. So what you're doing is you're basically, as you're saying, you're not making it easy for them. You're making it's something that they really want to do, as you said, and that makes it that's fantastic. You don't just sort of, oh, I quite fancy this today. But no, it's actually a lot more than that. And I think that's fantastic, because but I do understand how difficult it is when, you really believe in some kids, and then they just don't want to go there. Yeah. And that's very hard. And I mean, it's sometimes heartbreaking, isn't it? When you see that and they just aren't pulling through, and they're just, and then you see them sort of turn backwards rather than go forwards. It's like, oh God.
I've seen that happen many times, and it's difficult to see, but you can't force someone to do something. You kind of have to let someone make their own mistakes. And some people choose to learn the hard way. We try to give kids a pathway to learning the easy way, and we talk to them about the pitfalls they're going to see in college and after college, and the challenges they're going to have with other people and with work and with school. And some kids aren't ready, and that's okay. If they're not ready, they're not ready. They're going to learn at a later time in their life. So it's interesting, when you talk about it being heartbreaking, because that's exactly how I've felt a number of times when I've seen children and older kids make bad decisions in their life. But you see it so much eventually that you just have to be able to let go and not be too attached, and trust that things will work out the way it's meant to work out for them.
Well, the same happens for adults, doesn't it? You can see adults do the same thing. Think, oh no, please don't do that. But you know,
Exactly.
as ever it is, it's people have their own path and their own journey, and they have to make their own choices. And sometimes
Exactly.
it's not nice to stand around the side and watch people, but you know, there we go. Anyway, I mean, I love the sound of it, and I love the fact that your foundation is called Inspiring Children Foundation. I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, James, and lovely to hear about what you're doing. And thank you so much for sort of carving out a little bit of time in your busy schedule. And I'll put some information down at the bottom. I'll put some links down, and so that if anybody's interested, they, you know, they'll be able to kind of check out more about it. So.
Charlotte, and I appreciate you and what you're doing, writing your children's books. It's interesting because today, talking about tennis and children's books, Ash Barty, I don't know if you know Ash Barty, she's been former world #1. She's won Wimbledon. She just won the Australian Open this year. She's an Australian tennis player, and she just retired from tennis. But she just announced today or yesterday that she's moving into children's novels and moving into children.
How interesting.
So I love the fact that you're doing that. I think that has a real impact on children because it's getting them at a young age to be aware of mental and emotional health. And I think there's a real opportunity there, and just want to kind of commend you to that, because it's very important work that you're doing.
Well, it's nice to know that a top tennis player has turned her hand to this as well, because I mean, for me it's a little bit of a departure from music to go sideways into writing a children's novel. It's not what anybody quite expected, but I've really enjoyed it.
That's amazing. No, it's absolutely incredible. What's the name of it, by the way? Is it out yet or not out?
This is what it looks like.
Cocoon.
Yeah, Cocoon. It's the Russian word for horse, sort of noble horse.
Okay.
They're very, you know, and it's basically a story about two young half Russian brothers who end up, you know, it's a magical horse, and they go to magical lands, and one is very dark country and one is much more magical and miraculous country, and they learn different things, and they have a mission. And in order to manage this mission and achieve their goals, they have to learn about emotional intelligence. They have to manage their feelings. That's one of the key things.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's if any way to get a copy of it over to Vegas, I'm sure we'd.
Well, it's very easy. You can get it on Amazon very easy. I'll put the link down. I'll send it to you later.
Please send me that link, because I definitely want to read that. So yeah, that's awesome. And then, yeah, for anyone listening, if they want to learn more about us, it's inspiringchildren.org, on Instagram @inspiringchildren. We also have an online mental health community on Twitch. It's called Inspire House. So on twitch.tv/InspireHouse. And the final website is jewelneverbroken.com. So we have a lot of.
I'll put them down. I'll put them down so nobody needs to remember all of that. I'll put them down in the description below. So anyway, thank you so much for giving up your time. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Charlotte.